Hey everybody, this is Tom from VermiBag. So this is the second Li'l Mammoth that I'm going to go ahead and set up. And this one is made out of the Oxford material, so it's really not very breathable at all. The lid is a cordura, so it does breathe a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and run this system through the test and compare it to the other one that's made out of cordura. The only thing I don't like is I don't care for this Oxford material that much because over time it tends to get really stiff and crinkly. And I'm not certain if it affects the strength of it over time. Whereas the cordura always remains very pliable, even when it's several years old, it's still very pliable and strong. So I'm kind of tending towards the cordura. And I'd rather have a system actually be a little bit on the dry side than on the wet side, because it's much easier to control a system and correct it. If you're a little bit dry, you add a little bit of water. But if you have a system and it's too wet, you can't just easily take that moisture out of there. There's quite a bit of effort that goes into it. You have to add a lot more dry material into the system. You have to change how you're feeding, maybe not add so much wet food scraps into the system. Whereas if your system's a little bit dry, again, it's very simple to get a big garden sprayer and just spray it for 15 seconds every time you feed, and it'll keep the system in perfect check. So I'm going to go ahead and bring you in. We're going to go ahead and set this up, and I'm going to set this bag up as a new bag. I'm going to go ahead and separate some worms the best I can pretty quickly. There might be a little bit of material in with them, but for the most part it'll be a pretty big concentration of worms. So I'm going to go ahead and put the paper on the bottom like I normally do on setting any VermiBag up, and then go ahead and put in some bedding and then dump the worms on top. So now, as always, when setting up a VermiBag, the first thing you want to do is go ahead and cover up the harvest panel area with a couple sheets of newspaper. Not a ton, just maybe a couple sheets. I normally put 2 sheets deep, but that's the only sheet I have, so I'm going to go ahead and then just add a paper towel like that. And again, you can soak it in water and put it in here, or you can just spray it down once you put it in. Now, I use a garden sprayer like this, and anybody that has a VermiBag, I really recommend you getting something like this. You can buy these on Amazon for like 10 bucks. They're probably cheaper there than Home Depot, I would imagine. I'm not really sure. I think this is 1.5 gallons. You pump it up and it'll put out so much water compared to a hand sprayer. If you're using a hand sprayer, you could sit there for 5 minutes spraying and your hand will be killing you. And this thing will put the same amount of water out in probably about 30 seconds. So it's really nice for maintaining the moisture in the VermiBag. Just do a quick spray down on them every time you feed them. So I'm here, just going to spray down this paper. And there we go. I'm going to go ahead and get some bedding. Place some bedding in there, probably about 4 to 5 inches probably. Now this bedding has a lot of coffee grounds in it. I'm getting so many coffee grounds that I've been mixing up a lot more bedding lately, and then mixing the coffee in and then churning it up again, and the coffee kind of heats up a little bit, and then I'll mix it in some more. So the coffee gets pretty well, really starting to compost by the time I actually add it to a bag. You notice these, I saw a coffee pod there, yeah. I have these coffee pods that I get all the time, and sometimes I don't break them open, and it takes the worms a while to go through this material that's around these things. So if I do see these pods, I normally just bust them open for the worms to get them a little bit faster. Now, I do have some big chunks of cardboard in this. The last batches of material I've been doing lately, I've been getting kind of lazy, and I haven't been shredding my cardboard in a shredder, so I just do it by hand. So they're a lot bigger chunks. And when you have big chunks like this, especially if they're wadded up, when you do the first harvest, especially if I'm putting this down at the bottom of the bag, the first harvest comes out, you're probably going to have some chunks of this cardboard left. It's no big deal. You just take this material when you screen it out, throw it back in the top of the bag and run it through another cycle. There's no issues whatsoever. So now I'm going to go ahead and separate a few worms out crudely, if I don't get too much bedding with them, and place them in here, see about how many I get. I'd like to start it off with at least 3 pounds, but I don't know if I can separate that many quickly. So the worms I'm getting for this system are actually coming out of this VermiBag tote that I have. This is the one that had the migration panels that I did the accelerated harvest on twice. So they've really worked this material over pretty well. There's definitely a lot of chunks of material in here still because I added some larger cardboard. So all I'm doing is taking the material out of here, dumping it in the screen here. I'm doing a quick screening on it to get most of the castings, which are just beautiful here, out of it. And once I get it down for most of it out of there, you can see what it looks like here. There's just a ton of worms in there and uncomposted material. And I'm taking that material and I'm dumping it. Again, you can see the number of worms that are in this thing. There's a lot. Zoom in a little bit here and I'll show you some of these castings. I mean, these are just wonderful. There's a few worms in here. If I can see them, I mean, not very many, but if I see any, I'll quickly throw them into this other side and they'll end up in the new Li'l Mammoth. But for the most part, that screen catches most of the worms, don't go through it. I get a few small ones. Now, there are cocoons that go right straight through it, so I'll probably take this material here, put it in a 5-gallon bucket or so, let it sit for a while, and then I'll bait out some worms probably in about a month after all the cocoons are probably hatched. Let's take a look at the separated pile. So I'm going to dump this material just directly into the Li'l Mammoth. I don't know how many, there's definitely several pounds here. I don't know exactly how many, but there's a fair number of worms. I may go ahead and do a separation on one other tote that I have running. So I'm just going to go ahead and place all these contents in here. Looks like it's most of them. Spread them out just a little bit. And we have a new system up and running. So, like I said, I may go ahead and grab one other tote that I have and separate the worms out of that. I need to harvest it anyway, and I'll dump a few extras in here because I would like to start this with at least a good 3 pounds, and I'd kind of guesstimate what I had here, probably over 2, maybe 3. But again, I just want to start the system with a pretty good number of worms to get some result pretty quickly. So there you have it, setting up another Li'l Mammoth. This is the Oxford one, so it doesn't breathe as well. So we'll start monitoring this weekly and we'll see how this one does in comparison to the cordura one. So this is Tom from VermiBag. Till next time.